Osiris versus Anubis. Who was the true god of the afterlife? The mystery of the two lords of the afterlife. Imagine yourself in ancient Egypt, a land filled with grand temples, sky-high pyramids, and the gentle sound of the Nile flowing eternally. As the sun sets and its golden hues tinge the colossal statues of the gods, two figures stand out in the Egyptian pantheon: Osiris and Anubis. Their names echo in the popular imagination as gods of the afterlife, lords of death and the afterlife. Yet a nagging question remains: who really ruled the afterlife? Osiris, the king who died, rose again, and became ruler of the underworld? Or was Anubis, the guardian of the dead and judge of souls, the true lord of Duat? The answer is not as simple as the papyri suggest. Throughout this text, we will explore the evolution of these two gods, their roles, and the subtle conflict that arose over time. A conflict that reflects not only mythology, but the very essence of death and life in ancient Egypt. The rise of Osiris. The king who didn't die, Osiris was not just a god, but a king who ruled Egypt as a mortal man before his tragic death. In ancient times, he brought civilization to the Egyptian people, teaching them agriculture, laws, and sacred rituals. However, like all great rulers, his destiny was intertwined with envy and betrayal. His brother Seth, driven by jealousy and a desire for power, planned a cruel death for Osiris. During a great banquet, Seth presented a custom-made coffin, offering it to whoever fit inside it. Unaware of the trap, Osiris lay down in the coffin, which was immediately closed and thrown into the Nile, sealing his death. From that moment on, Osiris would become the first god to experience death definitively. Or would he? His devoted wife Isis refused to accept the loss. She traveled throughout Egypt, facing enormous challenges until she found her husband's body. With her magical skills, Isis resurrected Osiris, but he did not return to life as mortals do. He resurrected in Duat, the realm of the dead, becoming the ruler of that afterlife. Osiris's resurrection brought with it a new meaning to death. Now death was not the end, but a transition to something eternal. Osiris's ascension to the realm of the dead, or Duat, was not a simple or unopposed conquest. When he became the ruler of the afterlife, there was, in fact, already an established order in that realm, and other divine beings exercised their power over the souls of the deceased. Before Osiris, the realm of the underworld was ruled by other gods and entities. One of the most important was Anubis, the jackal-headed god who was the guardian of the tombs, and the one responsible for guiding the souls of the dead to judgment. Anubis was seen as a key god in preparing and protecting souls as they passed through Duat, helping them face the dangers and challenges they faced on their way to the judgment hall, where the person's heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. However, the rise of Osiris brought a new perspective to death. Although Anubis continued to play a key role in the journey of souls, Osiris became the supreme judge and the ruler of the realm of the dead. He came to symbolize the transition from death to an eternal life, something that held much more promise than simply passing through the darkness of Duat. His resurrection gave the Egyptians a vision of a more hopeful afterlife, in which the individual could be rewarded for their earthly actions if they were just and worthy. Osiris, as ruler of the Duat, came to offer the possibility of spiritual rebirth. This concept of an afterlife became central to Egyptian religion, and faith in the resurrection of Osiris was directly linked to belief in the immortality of the soul. The Egyptians believed that by following the principles of Ma'at and being faithful to the gods, they too could experience a resurrection, or at least an eternal life in the afterlife, under the rule of Osiris. It is important to note that even with the rise of Osiris, Seth did not disappear from the scene. Although he was the god of destruction, war, and chaos, Seth was also associated with the control of evil, and his rivalry with Osiris would continue to be a cosmic struggle that would be reflected not only in mythology, but also in Egyptian rituals and beliefs. Osiris's victory over death did not mean the complete disappearance of Seth or the chaos he represented. Thus, death, resurrection, and the struggle between opposites were constantly intertwined, shaping the Egyptian view of the afterlife. Therefore, Osiris's ascension to the throne of the afterlife represented more than a victory over death. It was also a victory of order, renewal, and hope for all Egyptians, while also creating a new dynamic among the gods of Egypt, with Anubis, Seth, and others still in the fold, maintaining their roles in the complex divine web. But was Osiris's ascension to the throne of the afterlife without resistance? Or was there a ruler who already held power over souls before him? Anubis, the guardian of lost souls before Osiris, Anubis already ruled the Duat. He was the jackal god, the protector of the tombs and the judge of souls. Anubis played a crucial role in the process of souls' transition, guiding them through the shadows of the afterlife. Until the moment of their judgment, he was responsible for the weighing of the heart, a ceremony feared and revered by the Egyptians. Imagine yourself in front of a mystical scale, where on one side is your heart, weighing the deeds of your life. On the other, the feather of Maat, the goddess of truth and justice. If your heart were lighter than the feather, you would go to paradise, the field of reeds, where you would live eternally in peace. But if your heart was heavy with sin, you would be devoured by Ammit, the terrifying crocodile-headed creature, doomed to eternal annihilation. Anubis's transition from ruler of the Duat to subordinate to Osiris, though not explicitly detailed in the mythological sources, certainly raises questions about possible conflict or discomfort between the two gods. Anubis's change in status reflects a shift in Egyptian beliefs, as Osiris became the central god of death and the afterlife, with his ascension to the throne of the afterlife. The question that arises is, how did Anubis, such a powerful and revered deity, react to this change in position? Anubis, as the jackal god, played a central role in the cycle of life and death, being responsible for leading the souls of the dead to judgment. His work was vital to the cosmic balance, and his association with death was profound. He was not just a guide, he was the judge, the protector, and the one responsible for maintaining order in the Duat. His image as a jackal symbolized his connection with the dead, being an animal associated with the underworld, the necropolis, and mourning. When Osiris re-emerged as the supreme ruler of the afterlife, the situation in Duat began to change. Osiris not only ruled the underworld, he brought with him a new perspective, that of resurrection and the afterlife. This meant that while Anubis still led souls to judgment, he now acted under Osiris's authority, acting as an intermediary between the world of the living and the world of the dead, but no longer the ruler of that reality. Did Anubis accept this change peacefully? Although there are no clear accounts of open conflict between him and Osiris, we can imagine that, in mythological terms, this transition could have been marked by an underlying tension. Anubis was not only the god of death, but also the judge of souls. His role of weighing the hearts of souls and determining their fate was an immense and prestigious responsibility. With the rise of Osiris, Anubis had to adjust to the new paradigm, becoming a sort of assistant on the journey of souls, rather than the absolute ruler of Duat. Furthermore, the relationship between Osiris and Anubis could be seen as a reflection of the broader shift in Egyptian beliefs. The Egyptians began to see death not simply as an end, but as a transition to a new existence, a renewal through Osiris. This meant that Anubis's authority, although still essential, was perceived differently. His role as guide and judge continued, but now under the aegis of Osiris, who brought the idea of an eternal life, more symbolic and hopeful. This shift may have been a form of cosmic balance, in which Anubis and Osiris, although with different roles, complemented each other. Anubis remained the guardian of justice and order, but Osiris became the symbol of a life beyond death, offering a possibility of renewal. In mythology, deities, even the most powerful, often have to adjust their roles according to the needs and changes of society. In short, although there are no major reports of an explicit conflict between Anubis and Osiris, the change in the hierarchy of Duat was probably not entirely easy for Anubis. He was one of the pillars of Egyptian religion, and his role in the afterlife was fundamental. Even though he accepted his new role alongside Osiris, the dynamic between the two gods reflects the complexity and adaptability of Egyptian beliefs, which evolved to incorporate new meanings about death and immortality. Anubis not only guided souls, but also watched over cosmic justice, acting as an impartial judge. He was an essential god in Egyptian cosmology, the intermediary between the world of the living and the world of the dead. But with the arrival of Osiris, Anubis began to lose some of his primacy in the afterlife. Instead of being the ruler of the underworld, he came to be seen as an assistant, a guide, a servant of Osiris. But did Anubis accept this change in status peacefully? Was there a hidden conflict between the two gods for dominion over Duat? The silent duel for the realm of the dead, the most widely known myths suggest that Osiris took control of the afterlife without much dispute. However, considering Anubis's former position as ruler of the underworld, one might question whether Osiris's rise to power truly occurred without resistance. Before he was reduced to the role of guide, Anubis was revered as the supreme judge of souls. His temples and cults were immense, and he enjoyed enormous popularity among the Egyptians. Over time, however, the influence of the priests of Osiris grew, and with it, the rise of Osiris as the Lord of Duat. Some scholars suggest that this shift was not only a mythological transition, but also a political one. The priests of Osiris used their religious power to weaken Anubis's position, promoting the idea that he should be subordinate to Osiris. In this way, Anubis was slowly removed from his role as ruler of the afterlife, and his role became that of assisting souls on their journey, a change that may have been difficult for a god of his stature to accept. The idea of a silent duel between Osiris and Anubis for control of Duat reflects a complex dynamic that goes beyond traditional mythology and into the realms of religious politics and social change in ancient Egypt. Although the myths tell us stories of harmony or acceptance, between the two gods, the transformation of Anubis's role can be seen as the result of a deeper struggle, fueled by changes in both the divine plan and the power structure of the priesthood. The rise of Osiris and the loss of power of Anubis. Anubis, as mentioned, was the supreme judge of souls and the guardian of Duat. His role was essential not only to Egyptian religion but also to the organization of the afterlife, and he was a central figure in Egyptian cosmology. The Egyptians relied on Anubis to ensure that souls were judged fairly, ensuring a safe passage to the afterlife. However, with the rise of Osiris, death came to be seen not only as an end, but as a transition to renewal and eternal life, which gave Osiris a more central position not only in the Egyptian pantheon, but also in the popular and religious imagination. This concept of resurrection and the continuity of the afterlife, represented by Osiris, aligned with a more hopeful and positive view of death, while Anubis represented the more feared and definitive death. The change in the position of Anubis may also have been favored by the rise of the priests of Osiris, who gained increasing influence, especially during the Middle Kingdom. They promoted the idea that Osiris should be the absolute ruler of the Duat, while Anubis became an auxiliary figure, relegated to the role of guiding souls to judgment, but no longer the final judge. This movement of religious restructuring did not happen abruptly, but was a gradual process, fueled both by the growing prestige of Osiris and by a repositioning of Egyptian religion itself, in which the afterlife began to be understood in a more positive light. Political and religious rivalry. In addition to the changes in the mythological pantheon, the rivalry between Osiris and Anubis can also be seen as a reflection of the political and social tensions in ancient Egypt. The power of the priests of Osiris was not only a religious issue, but also had political implications. During the Middle Kingdom, the figure of Osiris began to gain central importance in religious cults and practices, in part due to the emphasis that the priests of Osiris placed on resurrection and the promise of eternal life. This made them influential not only spiritually but also politically. On the other hand, Anubis was widely venerated, but his association with death and judgment, more closely tied to the idea of rigorous and irrevocable justice, did not align as well with the refreshing emphasis that Osiris offered. The religious movement in favor of Osiris not only reflected changes in popular beliefs about death, but also helped to consolidate the power of a group of priests who were becoming increasingly influential. These priests used Osiris's popularity to undermine Anubis's power base, suggesting that he, as the guardian of souls, should be subordinate to the god of resurrection, since the promise of rebirth and eternal life was more appealing to the Egyptians than the idea of a judgment without return, a quiet conflict. Although there is no explicit mythological narrative of a direct confrontation between Osiris and Anubis, the shift in the dominance of Duat can be interpreted as a quiet struggle for control of souls and the definition of their fate after death. Anubis, who previously exercised almost absolute power over the underworld, had to submit to a new reality in which his role as judge was subordinated to the idea of renewal and resurrection that Osiris brought. This restructuring was not only a shift in the positions of the gods, but also a reflection of a larger shift in Egyptian worldviews and the power structures of society. The rise of Osiris was not just a religious transformation, but a victory for the priests of Osiris who, through their growing influence, helped to change the way the Egyptians viewed the afterlife. The silent duel between Osiris and Anubis, therefore, reflects a battle for relevance in the hearts and minds of the Egyptians, a contest that involved not only the gods and their functions, but also the priests, the people, and the fate of Egyptian religion itself. Ultimately, the rise of Osiris represented a reconfiguration of Egyptian beliefs, but the presence and respect for Anubis as the guardian of justice and judgment never completely disappeared, even if he was relegated to a secondary role. The dispute between Osiris and Anubis was not limited to myths and cults. The rivalry between the followers of both gods may have been a struggle for power, a reflection of the religious and political tensions that occurred in ancient Egypt. If we consider the political importance of the priests of Osiris and their rise during the Middle Kingdom, we can understand how this dispute was intertwined with the very fate of Egyptian religion. Who was the true god of the afterlife? Now that we have explored the stories and roles of these two gods, we can try to answer the big question: who really ruled the afterlife? The answer is not simple, because the truth is that both played complementary roles. If we consider the oldest mythology, Anubis was the first to rule the afterlife. He was the guardian of the tombs and the judge of souls, and his authority was unquestionable. But over time, the figure of Osiris took center stage. His death and resurrection symbolized hope and transformation, and he came to be seen not only as the ruler of the underworld, but as the god who granted immortality and guaranteed eternal life to those who followed him. In fact, the relationship between Osiris and Anubis was not simply one of rivalry, but of complementarity. Anubis prepared souls, guided them, and judged them, while Osiris ruled over the final destiny of souls, granting them the chance to reach paradise or eternal annihilation. Both, therefore, played an essential role in the journey of the Egyptian soul. But this contest between the two gods can be interpreted in an even deeper way. The question of who was the true lord of the afterlife perhaps reflects a broader human fear and need, the fear of death, and the search for a just and cosmic order beyond it. In many cultures, death is not seen as an end, but as a transition, and the gods who govern this transition play a crucial role in understanding the universe. So, instead of choosing between Osiris or Anubis as the true lord of the afterlife, perhaps the answer lies in how they both symbolize complementary aspects of death. Anubis, the guardian and judge, and Osiris, the sovereign and resurrector. The true answer, perhaps, lies in how we ourselves face our own mortality. If you had to choose one of these gods to guide you on your final journey, who would it be? The wise resurrected king Osiris or the faithful guardian Anubis? Who, after all, would give you more hope in the afterlife? Thank you for watching this far. Now subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. And don't forget to watch other videos from the channel. Thank you.